looking back on when I was thinking about this podcast, who would be the earliest guests? Who would be really set it apart, get it going? And I immediately thought of our first guest, which is Tim, who is Tim Robinson. Tim has been a successful homeowner, but he's also been a successful property owner. And he's not had meteoric success. He's had really steady and true success. So I want to share that with you today. But also, I just want to point out that Tim's experience in real estate exemplifies the very three things why we set up this podcast. One, to provide information to a general audience and to a professional audience, to inspire people to take action, and lastly, to really promote collaborating with, the best of the best, or definitely the top 20% of people who are out there in these respective fields. Help me welcome our very first guest, Tim Robinson. Welcome to Real Estate Connections. And we're going to have a really good time today. Barring any technology problems, we're going to have a great time today. And that is because I want you to know somebody very dear to me, Tim Robinson. And the reason Tim Robinson is among the earliest episodes of this new podcast is because Tim is not only a real estate buyer, seller, investor, teacher, and now real estate professional. So all of these things all started 10 years ago, maybe, Tim?
Yeah, about that.
10 years ago. And it is not only that these are his worlds, but he's doing it well, really, really well. And for somebody who has taken a lot of risks in terms of investing and not done so well, I want you to know an investor, a real estate professional who is doing it not without risk or anything like that, not with too much risk, but is really, really doing it. And not only that, teaching others. So let's have a conversation with Tim. Tim, welcome.
Thank you, Mary. I'm so
Yeah.
glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you are too. And full disclosure, we are related by marriage. And I'm so happy, so happy. And Tim, you're in Maryland, DC,
I am,
Virginia.
yeah. Yep, we're in
Maryland,
Silver Spring, Maryland.
Silver Spring, Maryland. And you're a
Mhm.
native.
I am a native. Yes,
Native,
my
my.
parents live in my childhood home exactly 1 mile from here. So the kiddos can ride the bikes over there, and my
Oh,
sister lives 2 miles from here. So yeah, we've all been well, except for my parents, we've all been around, and we all landed back here. So it's really kinda
that's
fun.
fantastic. And having lived there 49 years as a replant from Massachusetts and now back in Massachusetts, I know how transitional that area is and how magnificent that you're able to, get the family back together again and be a family in that area. It is so magnificent. Okay, Tim, we're going to talk real estate.
Okay.
Now,
Enough
did you
about
ever read?
family. Let's talk real estate.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Family's fun though. Family's fun. So did you ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
I did, and I think that is kind of the classic. Yes, I have more on that, but I think that
One.
is something I've read very early on when I
Mm-hmm.
stumbled upon real estate investing when I was
Mm-hmm.
looking for, I guess, occupational/life changes at the beginning of my journey. And it was an eye opener to say the least, I would say.
Yeah, because what I think the goal of what Kawasaki's message is what you're living, but you're living it within some very reasonable parameters is how I view it. And I say that because my experience is with people who have gotten in the real estate world. Oh, I want to make money, or I love houses, or
Mhm.
it's a easy killing. I'm going to be a landlord, and each one of those experiences is loaded, really loaded, and with a heavy dose of failing at it. And tell us how you got started. I know you were in flux with work, but was this a long plan for you?
No, it was a total accident, and that's kinda how I like it. I think it was, and I don't know, I mean, please, Mary, I can talk, so pull me back on the rails if I start going too long or off subject. Um, but yeah, I stumbled into it. I think real estate investing, I think, as most people know, is not something that was taught in school. I think it is more of a focus now in colleges. You can get, real estate degrees and stuff like that.
Mhm,
It's nothing I had ever really thought of. I think in the back of my mind, there was a seed um, from very long ago where I'm just kind of like, well, it's kind of cool to have rental properties where they buy the house for you. I mean, when I'm 21, 22 years old. And then, of course, I did nothing with that for a long time. And then I think it was 2016, and I won't go into all the details, but I had been with a tech company for about 6 years doing sales, and I was doing
mhm,
very well.
mhm,
And I got to the point where I think I was making more money than the owners wanted to pay me, and so they switched my commission structure overnight, and it was one of those like, here's your new goals. And I'm like, well, those are physically impossible.
mhm.
And so my check went in half overnight. And I was like, well, that's not cool. Like I don't, I've done a lot of work here. I've made you guys a lot of money and I have no control over the situation. And so I was just dating your lovely niece at the time. And we started talking. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to work in any industry where someone can just pull the rug out from under me. I want to be kind of in control of my own income, and I don't want it to be capped by anyone else. And so I kinda just went down, she was very supportive, and I just kinda went down the rabbit hole of what else can I do? And I guess that inkling of kind of, I didn't even know what to call it back then, but landlording, right? Like owning rental properties and having someone else, pay for them for you kind of reignited, and I went deep. I found Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read all the books, investing in triplexes, duplexes, quads. I'm a numbers nerd, so I dove into the analytics and I started running the calculations and started talking to other investors. I remember reaching out to you very early on, and I was
Mhm,
like, "Mary, what's it all about? This real estate investing?" And just literally talking to anyone I could. And I just devoured it, and I fell in love with it. It was one of those things where it was. I mean, light bulb moment is kind of overused, but it was I don't know. It was like a light went on. I was like, "Oh,
mhm,
this is how people do it," right? Like, this is how people build generational wealth and security and flexibility in their chosen career paths is by having this background of rental portfolio that pays off themselves and provides a little bit more on top.
mhm,
And it made sense to me. Like, it just made sense as an investment vehicle. And I'm in stocks too, and, Adrian with the TSP and all the other assets and stuff like that, but real estate is just more fun, and I think it's more lucrative, and to your point, it's not easy. Anyone who says, "This is just super passive and you can
mhm,
buy a house and retire," it doesn't work that way. And I think it's dangerous when people say it does. But I think if you're interested and want to learn more, there's just so much to know, and I really enjoy helping people do that.
mhm. So, to your point, we were not raised entrepreneurs.
No.
We were raised by, in your case, government worker, and I was, in the nonprofit world for a long time. We would get a salary, or in your case, a commission, but never in terms of, going out there and building your own business with that has such a high risk factor to it as it does. So, so you and your wife made a decision to start investing. And so what was your first step?
My first step, we were living in a neighborhood called Shaw in DC at the time in a condo that we still own today. The first step we did once I convinced Adrian that this made sense and I had read enough books and done enough calculations. And it's funny, Mary, I do want to spend some time talking about real estate investment personas or archetypes within marriage because it's
Mhm.
fascinating. And with all the clients we've worked with over
Uh-huh.
the years, I love getting, partners on the phone together and just seeing it's almost never like we're both totally into this or we're both terrified. It's always one is like let's go and one is
Mhm,
like this is terrifying,
mhm,
right? And that is very much the case in our relationship. She's incredibly analytical, unbelievably conservative, very smart with money, and this was just foreign to her. And so once we talked for months and months and months, we took out a home equity line of credit on the Shaw property because we had a lot of equity in that. Adrian
Right.
bought at the right time.
I remember.
And we used that home equity line of credit. Early in my career, I wanted nothing but multifamily. I really liked the idea of multiple units being rented out at once. So if 1 or 2 people leave, I still get rent. That was kind of foundational for me. I still somewhat believe that, but there's some nuance there. So in DC, there's not much multifamily for under
Right.
$1 million. And so I went to Baltimore and
Mhm.
I literally drove around Baltimore, Maryland for weeks looking at properties and talking to people and talking to different lenders and exploring options, seeing how I could make this a reality. And we ended up taking out the home equity line of credit, buying a triplex in Bolton Hill in Baltimore. At that time, it was 350 grand. Put 25% down. 2 of the units were at that time tenanted, and 1 unit hadn't been touched in 25 years, and
Oh.
that was the best unit. And so bought the triplex, did a lot of grunt work for 4 or 5 months in unit 1, took my old dad up there with me, and we were laying concrete and, fixing windows and putting in new washer dryers and kind of learning renovation while we were, or he wasn't learning, he knows it, I don't know it, but
Now
we
you
were
do.
learning how to do that
Mhm.
and adding value, and then once that was ready, we rented out the bottom unit. It's been, fully occupied ever since. So that was kind of my first step, and that was my first solo investment property. So now we had 2 properties basically from the equity out of 1. And I was like, "Well, this is magical," was the only word I could think of, because I think the equity piece of real estate investment is sometimes so hard to access that it just seems like a someday issue, right? Like, I have all these properties worth X amount of dollars, and I can get it someday. There are ways to get it earlier. And that is a part that I found fascinating, where we can relay the money we have built into this condo in Shaw into a whole nother property. And then they can both simultaneously build equity. And
Mhm.
guess what? If we do it again, we can do it with 3. Right. And so that's kind of what we did. We ended up shortly thereafter purchasing a house in Petworth in DC because we wanted to get some more space because we were going to have children. And so at that time, I think within a year, we had 3 properties, 5
Mhm.
units, and we were kinda off to the races.
Wow. Amazing. And I do remember some of that. And I think of, timing, um, the timing of that condo that was bought at a really, really good price, and then to see the market get really, really good, right?
It was luck.
Um,
I mean, and
it's
I
luck.
think that, Mary, that's a big part of it, right?
It's
Like, it
luck.
is there is
Shaw,
strategy.
buying in Shaw,
Buying a
which
Shaw
was which I
in
went
20
by on a bus every day for years, and it was not a safe place to
no,
live,
no. It
and
was
now it
very
became a
early
cash
adopter.
cow. Yeah,
Yeah.
really
And I
became
think
a
that
cash
that is
cow.
something that's not necessarily talked about enough in my
Yeah,
book. I mean, people always say time in the market versus timing the market. I think that's absolutely true.
yeah.
But the timing of the market is incredibly subjective and can bite you, right? Or it can
Yes.
really help you. Like this was not brilliance on my end. This was just Adrian buying at the right time, waiting till the opportune moment and seeing how much equity he had and pulling it out, right? Like there is a lot of luck to this.
Yeah.
I don't want to pretend there's research and diligence and, partnerships and all the other things that go into it, but sometimes you're just like, "Whew, glad I bought that," right? Like,
And
it's a stroke of luck
sleeplessness?
sometimes.
I mean, were you anxious? Or did you have much anxiety, in these transitions?
There was some. I don't wanna pretend like I was either terrified or, like, completely, laissez-faire, like, there was a little bit, but I think that I like to consider myself kind of a doer.
Mhm.
I research an incredible amount and get as knowledgeable on a subject as I possibly can by talking to people and analyzing deals. And I had done that for months and months and months before we did any of this. So I was very confident in the fact that like this will work.
Mhm.
And so once I had all my pieces in place, there's still some anxiety because like I remember going up there and they're like, I remember seeing one of the tenants and I was just talking to them about their lease. I'm like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I own the building." And they're like, "What?" Because I wasn't super young, but at the same time, I'm not the type of guy that looks like he owns a building, right? And
Mhm.
so that was kind of intimidating and invigorating at the same time,
Mhm.
right? So I think there's always some hesitation, but one of my biggest heartbreaks, and just talking with investors for years now, is that over analysis. And just the fact that, "Hey, listen, John, I've been talking to you for 8 years about this, right? And you still haven't done it because it's not the right time, or one thing that you have in your mind that you think needs to happen hasn't quite lined up yet.
Mhm.
I just want to go back to what this any old house cost 8 years ago and what it costs now and how much you would have made in rent over these past 8 years. And like that kind of stuff really, it upsets me, right? Because like not everyone has to invest in real estate, but I think there comes a time where you just have to do it if you want to do it, right? Like if you've done your analysis, you've talked to people, you're confident in your skill set, you're confident in the partnerships you have, you just have to pull the trigger. And so that's kind of where I was very quickly. Um,
Did you have a mentor in this process, or are you pretty self-directed?
I was pretty self-directed. I had people that had been just in the real estate world that I knew. My friend Lorenzo, who's a flipper that I do private equity deals with, and you, and there was a couple other people that I could bounce ideas off of. But no one that's like, "Hey, I've done this for years, and this is how you do it." My mentors were kind of books, and just talking to people in real estate circles. And now I have people that I consider mentors. Now that I've been doing it for a while, oddly enough, I have people that I'm like, "Oh, you did this on a much bigger scale. Let me learn all I can from you." So that made it a little intimidating because I was figuring it out. I mean, there's so many things I would have done differently, because I was just kind of guessing. And
Mhm,
some of the books I read were 30 years old, right? And I was like,
mhm.
well, I need to form an LLC and get a commercial loan to get a triplex. You don't need to do that. Like, there's- you don't. I just read that in a book somewhere, and I'm like, I guess I have to do that.
Oh,
And so I got a
yes.
much higher interest rate and, maybe a slim legal protection through my LLC, but completely unnecessary and expensive. And I ended up actually dissolving that LLC and putting it back in my name several
Did
years
you
after that.
really? Oh,
So,
good.
but to that point, Mary, I think I wouldn't change anything, right? Because that got me to do it.
Mhm.
I think sometimes we do things incorrectly, but we still do them. And I think if anything, real estate is an incredibly forgiving asset. We're not buying crypto. We're not buying stocks for startup companies that could theoretically go to zero. I like housing because it has intrinsic value. It provides one of people's basic necessities in life. Everyone, not some people, everyone wants to
Mm.
have a roof over their head, right? And so even if it goes down a little bit, if we're renting it out, who cares? It'll go
And it's
back
in
up.
short supply,
Right.
right? It's
That's
in
it.
short supply.
And so all the boxes just checked, and it just made
Yeah.
sense to me as an asset class. And as long as I did it within my risk tolerance, which is pretty high, honestly, I knew everything would work out.
Yeah, tempered by your spouse,
Yeah, thank God.
so
Yeah,
and so I think that's really beautiful, in my family, I'm pretty risk-taking, and Carl's pretty accommodating, so really, having more of Adrian might have been more helpful too,
for sure.
yeah, in some of the deals that we did for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's a good balance because
fascinating.
I think they're and that again, after all the couples I've talked to for many years, it's kind of always like that to some degree, right? Like someone would be like, "Okay, let's go. Let's get 3 houses this year." And like the husband would be like, "Well, let's talk about this first, right?" And I think that's super necessary. So yeah, Adrian was kind of like, I was like, "I want to get 5 properties by the time I'm 40." She's like, "Let's try 2." Right? And so it's kind of like that yin and yang, and it balanced me well, because
Yeah.
I am kinda go, 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 and she is like, "Wait, let's analyze this for a year and a half and then go."
This is
Um,
true.
and so
This is true. Yes, that's
so that
wonderful.
that does help.
So Petworth, you lived in Petworth for a couple of years, right? Um, and then went overseas, is that what happened there?
Mary, looking back on it, we lived in Petworth for a grand total of 9 months, and we owned it for 5 years.
Oh,
That
really?
was yeah, it's very weird. We bought Petworth, and then Adrian took an opportunity for us to serve overseas. So we were there for 3 months. We moved to Paris for 3 months for a short tour. We came back home, we had our first son, and then 3 months after that, we moved to the Netherlands. So we owned it. We lived there for about 6 months. And then 3 months in Paris. Then we moved to the Netherlands for 3 years. So we rented it for 3 years. I managed it myself, with help from friends and contractors while overseas.
Mhm.
And then when we got back in 2022, I kept it for about 6 more months until the lease was up and the price had gone up tremendously during COVID, and that's the only property to this day that I've sold. And I can get into that if you want me to, the
We'll come
selling
back to
process.
it. Let's
So
come back to it.
since we're
Um,
talking investment, so while we were overseas, we bought 3 more houses,
mhm.
sight unseen, in Birmingham, Alabama. Right when we got back, I bought a quadplex in Kansas City, Missouri, sight unseen with partners we had established there. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. That was from the sale of my Petworth
That works.
house. So I did, and we can talk about 1031 as much or as little as you want. I did a
Mhm.
1031 exchange on the Petworth house and traded that for a it sounds weird to say traded that, but I traded that for a quad in Kansas City and 2 more single family houses in Birmingham.
So the definition of 1031, what you did with Petworth in order to maximize the the profit that you gained on Petworth, and yet didn't have to bear the tax burden.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's basically a way to indefinitely defer having to pay capital gains taxes, which were significant because
Yeah.
we sold it for several $100,000 more than we purchased it for.
Mm.
It also allows you to kind of simplify the process of purchasing other properties. So you basically use a certified 1031 exchange custodian.
Mhm.
They charge a nominal fee. You put all the money from the sale of your house into that, and then you can spend. And I'm not going to bore people with the all the stipulations, but you essentially have to spend all the equity that you accrued through purchasing
Mhm.
or through selling your initial house into other properties. So I put 25% down on 3 individual properties out of my proceeds from the sale of the Petworth house.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Really
So that was
wonderful.
I mean, there's cool ways like that where you can really kind of multiply if you're in growth phase, right? Like, we always talk to our investors about different phases of their investment path. We were very much in growth phase, and we just wanted to accumulate more properties, let the beauty of appreciation work for us, let the beauty of principal reduction, pay down by tenant accrue for us, spread out more rather than one huge lump sum in a very expensive house in DC where we
Yes.
weren't cash flowing much. It just made more sense at the time, and I'm glad we did that.
So what our readers, our listeners don't know yet is that while Tim was overseas as a spouse of a federal employee and not working for the federal government, but he and another spouse
Mhm.
started a business.
We did.
Well, you did, and very much to what you were describing about your purchases in was it Kansas City? You said, and Birmingham, right?
Birmingham, yep.
So tell us more.
Yeah. Yeah, I had met as I think real estate investors can't help but talk about real estate. It's kind of in our nature.
Mhm.
We love it and we want everyone to do it. And so through the grapevine, I had heard that my friend and now business partner Lisa Tilstra was also investing in real estate and had a small portfolio back in the States. And so of course I immediately introduced myself to her and said, we need to go get coffee. And we did. And I had a very, very small baby at the time that came to join us, my first son, who's now 7. And we talked for hours. And she told me what she was doing, how she was buying properties through a turnkey company
Mhm.
that essentially buys dilapidated houses, renovates them, and then sells them once they're renovated, and then immediately takes over the management. So it's about as hands off as you can be in markets where you haven't traveled. And I was like, "Well, that's brilliant. Tell me everything." And so we kind of dove deep, and I did my research, and I started talking to one of these turnkey companies after I had chosen Birmingham, and decided to buy one myself. What happens overseas when you're working for the government is they are kind enough to pay for your housing, and you really have a low expense profile. So although I wasn't working, we were saving a tremendous amount of money. Also renting out 3 properties while we were over there. That
Plus
was
COVID,
accumulating.
you were there for COVID. You couldn't
Plus
really spend
COVID.
your money. Yeah. Mhm.
Yep. And so we just had quote unquote extra money. And
Mhm.
so it made sense to buy. Interest rates were 3%. I mean, it was low hanging fruit, and it was a fantastic time. And then one day Lisa was visiting and she was over and we were kind of just talking. And I was like, you need to teach people how to do this. Like, this is awesome. And she's like, no, I think we should do it together. I'm like, okay. And so we formed a company called the REI Concierge. We're still operating today. We had a podcast, have a podcast. I guess we might come back, but we're 9 seasons in. Um, Started in 2020, and we've helped, I'd say, well over 100 folks buy houses in markets where they haven't traveled before, sight unseen
Mhm.
houses. And it's been an absolute blast. And what we realized through the process was how much we love teaching people about this stuff.
Yes.
We love doing it. And I think it's fascinating. And again, I can't harp on enough. This is like, I went to a lot of school, right? Like I went to college, I went to grad school, I got grad degrees. I never learned a single thing about real estate or honestly how to manage my own money. It's just not something I studied. Maybe it was taught and I just didn't choose those courses, but like this was all brand new to me and I'm just a consummate learner. And so the more I learned about this, the more I was fascinated and the more I can teach people about how I kind of fell into it and fell in love with it, the happier I get. So I've really enjoyed talking to people and just seeing that light go on in their eyes, like, oh, because it's foreign to us. Like, I remember talking to one client that was like, "Wait, you can have more than one mortgage?" I was like, "I have 9." Right? Like, this is something that people don't think about. Like, it's just not the American dream is to own your own house with the white picket fence and the garage and stuff like that, but, very few people, I think, since I'm in real estate so much, it seems like everyone's doing it, but when I talk to everyone else, they're not,
Mhm.
right? And so it's very foreign to people to be like, "You own well, how do you take care of those houses in Birmingham?" I'm like, "I've never even seen my houses in Birmingham." And like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "Let me tell you." Right? And because it's just it's fun. Like it's fascinating and it's different.
Mhm.
And financially, it makes all the sense in the world. So it's been a really fun journey. Lisa and I have got to meet great people. We've met clients all around the world that we've helped in various countries and had a lot of great guests on the podcast. And it's been a blast and we love doing it.
Well, your podcast was excellent and is excellent. And, and I've said to you and Lisa before on REI Concierge that you both are similar in the sense of you both are research oriented and thorough. And so as I would listen to your episodes of REI Concierge, I thought, wow, there is so much behind this, really behind this. And I was very impressed. So much so that we bought a house in
You
Alabama
did.
as
You're
well.
speaking to a client.
I was
Yes.
speaking to a client. That's right. I thought, "Oh, this is really cool. I gotta try this."
Yeah.
So, I'm glad you did all the work. That's all I
Yeah.
can say to you, Tim. I'm so glad you did all the work. And, but you were so like-minded. It reminds me that, when we look for professionals, we look for, like, the best, right? Or at
Mhm.
least the top 10%. And I find that, you're dealing with the company that you dealt with in Alabama, and I hope that maybe you and I can invite and have Spartan come visit
Sure.
and tell
Absolutely.
other people about turnkeys.
Mhm.
And there are other companies as well, but that's the positive one that we can cite right now. And but but to the point that we look for those professionals that are excellent, you know, and have the passion and enthusiasm that we see in you,
Mm.
right?
Well, thank you.
And uh, and it's as you say, it is you are self-taught. You are self-taught in this business, and that's the other amazing part. You don't need that master's degree or other degrees to do this. And so, audience, if this is something you love, just go after it. Really, really go after it.
Yeah.
But have an Adrian with you is what I would say. It is a good thing. Is really
Yes,
a good
that's a
thing.
good thing.
Somebody
Yeah.
to, and then find the people. So Tim, um, what advice would you give the listeners to if they got approached by, let's say, some kind of a scheme? That's a prejudiced word, but some kind of a plan to help you, earn a whole lot of money in real estate. What kind of things would be warning signs to you um, that you would advise people about? I mean, obviously, you picked up a lot of clients when you were overseas,
Yeah.
and since then.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're very much living in, I call it the guru age, which I don't love.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people charging just insane amounts of money I mean, it reminds me of when you used to get those mail order like CDs and cassettes in the mail, right?
Mhm.
Like, send me a check for $3,000 and I'll send you all these cassettes about how to get rich.
Mhm.
Like that doesn't cost $3,000. I'm not going to pay you $20,000 to sit in a week long class about how to gather funds to syndicate an apartment building. You know what I mean? So my first thing would be, how much are you charging for this? And it sounds very blatant, but I think that cuts to the chase. And then
Mhm.
if you get the whole, well, it's really the value proposition. It's not the value proposition. What's the cost?
Mhm.
Second, how much property do you own? That's always my question for realtors who call themselves investment specialists. If you're going to be an investment specialist, I want you to own investment properties.
Mhm.
If you don't, then you're teaching something you don't know about. Right. And so I think getting people's bona fides and seeing where they come from is absolutely essential, because we've had clients that have been pulled into these schemes for last lack of a better.
$30,000
Yeah, just
easily a year.
these master classes
Yes,
of, you got to
masterclass,
come and
yes.
be with the best and do all this. And there are groups. I'm not, there are groups where there is value in being in that network and bouncing ideas off truly brilliant people. But if you just have one or two people that are like, we form this new class and you're going to make 1 million this year, that's not true. Like, it's just not true. It's snake oil. And so I would just be very, very cautious with your money. Why would I spend $20,000 listening to you talk when I can spend $20,000 and get a single family home?
Mhm, mhm.
That that doesn't make
Exactly.
sense. If you're taking money out of my pocket to teach me to do something that you want me to do with my money, I just don't see, there's a disconnect there, right? And
Mm.
so Lisa and I were very, very hesitant. We had no idea what to charge for our services. At the same time, it costs money to have the podcast and the website and all the work we do and stuff like that. So our costs are very nominal, and we've never raised our costs. Like, they've always been the same. Because we really value, it's a passion project for us. We
Mhm.
both have other jobs. Like, Lisa has 38 jobs. I don't even know what she's doing half the time. She's climbing mountains while coaching clients. Like, she's a crazy person. I love her. But
She is a crazy
um
person, and I in my many years in Washington, DC, I met people who knew her, and there she is
sure
overseas
you did.
in Sri Lanka or someplace, and, "Do you know Lisa Teals?" "Oh, yeah, I know Lisa. She's"
She's Where's Waldo. I call her Where's Waldo.
Where's Waldo?
She's everywhere.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I think, Mary, I think that's a good point, and I think that needs to be talked about more.
Yes.
I think there have been a lot of people that there is always. I mean, Lisa and I are very strong proponents of, there is no one right way to do real estate.
Mhm.
You can do real estate however it fits your risk profile, however it fits your timeline, however it fits your budget. There's a way for you to do it. Anyone that says this is the only way to invest is incorrect,
Yes.
and be very wary.
Yes. Those REI clubs, those networks, I think that those are a place that, 1, you can get good resources, and 2, it's dangerous because that's where I think some of these, um, businesses that are out there to make business money as a business,
Yeah,
primarily, and God bless them, that's what they wanna do, but I think if you're new, and you have a few dollars in your pocket, I think you have to be circumspect about
for
something that
sure.
costs a lot of money, right?
Yeah, do it slowly. Like, you don't have to go as fast as I did. I know people that have gone exponentially faster than me, right?
Mhm,
Like, do your due diligence. Talk to
mhm,
as many people as you can. I didn't go into this blindly.
mhm.
I went into this. I mean, you say I'm self-taught, and that makes me sound cocky, but yeah,
Oh,
I just, you know what I mean? I just kind of learned and talked to people and bounced ideas off people, and then just kind of do it, right? But you don't need to spend a lot of money to learn how to do these things.
yes. I mean, Abraham Lincoln was self-taught, as I believe, but anyway, so you're in good
Ye
company.
I mean,
S
people say I'm like Abraham Lincoln all the time. I
Do
like
they
that.
really? It must be the
No, they
beard.
don't, but I would like them to.
You're much more handsome, let me tell you.
Oh, get out of here.
Um, so the other thing that you did, is you became a real estate agent.
I did.
And
Yeah,
so, and you're in that amazing area right now where there's been so much change, the Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland area. So much change, such a high concentration of federal employees, those very people who were overseas who, were your clients, et cetera, et cetera. So my sense is that there's a lot of churn, or there's certainly a lot of activity or tension around the market, in that area.
yeah, it's a rough time here. It's a time of great uncertainty. The market has certainly, especially in DC proper, taken a huge hit this year. Obviously with all the federal layoffs and, the State Department cuts and USAID, and this is the world in which I will live. Like, these
Hmm.
are my clients.
Hmm.
But you're right. I became a realtor. I got my license in 2018 because I fell in love with investing and I wanted to teach other people how to do this.
Hmm.
And so I'm at this very weird cross section of people that don't care how pretty your backsplash is, but really want to know what the numbers are on renting out the basement, right? And so like that, and that's not for everyone. And I kind of like it that way, right? Like I'm never going to be the guy on the Instagram feed that's showing you my new $3 million listing. I just don't care. I want to help. I love helping first time home buyers. I really love helping people that are moving back from overseas because I had to do that. I had to buy the house I'm sitting in sight unseen with a trusted realtor because you have to move back to a home, right? You're moving back to a hotel for a month and you really need someone to help you with that. So
Yes.
I love doing that through video and just consultation. I love helping people find cash flowing properties in DC and Maryland because people think it's impossible. It's not easy and they're few and far between, but they exist and it's
Mhm.
fun to show people how to do that.
Mhm.
So I live in very much a world of like active duty military, federal employees, and investment minded folks. Because that's what I love to do. And I think it's fun when you get to do what you love to do for a job. And that's kind of worked out well for me because
Mhm.
it's what I love to do. And I'm like, well, why don't I just do this full time? And so I did. And obviously, you spoke about entrepreneurship earlier, and I've always had kind of that spark in me, but it's scary, Mary. It's scary. Like coming from a
Yes.
W-2 world
Yeah,
is like,
W2.
hey, what am I going to do about health insurance? Right. And like, what if I don't make enough money this month? And sometimes you just have to do it. And I have absolutely no regrets. But it is not for everyone, but I couldn't do it any other way. I just think it's a blast.
Oh, I live in awe of you and respect for you and what you're doing, you and your wife, and I know we're gonna have many more conversations like this.
I hope so.
And so we're going to have Tim's contact information in the show notes and references to his company, REI Concierge. And also, Tim has agreed to come back and maybe we'll be, co-chairing or co-hosting some sessions in this podcast and going forward. Thank you for just providing such a big, rich kind of discussion about real estate, the many aspects of it in these
No,
very early episodes of Real Estate
thank you for having
Connections.
me. I'm excited for you. This is going to be a lot
Indeed.
of fun. It's always great to
Indeed.
talk to you.
Thanks so much, Tim. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you found this conversation useful to you and your real estate goals. You'll find the contact information for our guests and any links they recommend you have in the show notes. And should we be able to help you identify some strong real estate professionals in your area, drop us a note at info@realestateconnectionspodcast.com. Thanks again, and bye for now.